Now, COP26, of course, is going to be dominating headlines for the next week or so, so let's focus on that. African countries are expected to request rich nations to honour and deepen their pledges to fund the fight against climate change. This comes amidst the COP26 summit scheduled to be held in Glasgow in Scotland from Sunday. Organisers have warned that the chances of averting runaway climate change are dwindling. Well, the nations are set to focus on cuts in carbon emissions to try and restrict global warming to just 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. But African countries are facing financial challenges in curbing emissions and also adapting to the wrenching impact of climate change.
Today, this promise has become obsolete. It is no longer relevant. And yet, developed countries are still unable to mobilize the funds. Our view now is that we need to go much further. It is not the maximum goal under the Paris Agreement because the agreement says $100 billion is a minimum.
All right, then let's explore exactly what African countries should expect once the COP26 summit does get underway. Londrine Interret is the regional director of 350.org. He's joining us now from Uppsala over in Sweden. Thank you for your time this evening. So developed countries really did not deliver on that pledge to provide $100 billion in adaptation financing a year. And it's not the only thing they've lied about. When it comes to equity and distribution of vaccines, we're essentially seeing them hoarding hundreds of millions of doses as well. So going into COP26, why should African countries take any future promises of funding seriously?
Yeah, there are very evident reason to doubt about the promises or the pledges made by wealthy nations, because if you remember correctly, some pledges have been made before, starting from the Copenhagen summit, where 100 billion per year were promised, but as we know, wealthy countries failed to deliver. They promised sums, and also some of the commitments that were part of the Paris Agreement are also yet to be materialized. I think the COP26 in Glasgow is an opportunity for wealthy countries to seriously mend their ways and begin to pay the climate debt in terms of adaptation and reparation. I think the moment is not about making new pledges or commitment, but rather increasing and fulfilling the previous pledges, because the situation can't wait. If you look at the drought situation in northern part of Kenya, in the region of Marsabit and Wajir, and you go to Madagascar, you find millions of people who are at the moment on the brink of famine, who can't put food on the table. So this is such a situation which really can't wait, and which require immediate action and not future pledges or promises.
But at the end of the day, Laundry, the fact of the matter is that if these countries made all these fancy promises and they didn't deliver, the fact is African countries are alone in this matter. Because what leverage does a continent have to sit at the table and tell the G20 or the EU or the US and say, look, you guys made these promises, you need to deliver on them? I mean, there is no leverage on the table.
I understand that the power and the balances might not be so equal. When you look at global north versus the global south power and capability to find a right deal. But I think this is also a call on the African leaders to really appreciate the gravity of the situation and raise their tone and their ambition, because they have to advocate for the populations who can be a leader and seeing your population being, year after year, victim of a situation that can be prevented. I think they can also take advantage of an example, inspiration on how the world responded to the crisis. I think the pandemic has shown that if there is enough political will and ambition and action, no matter how the crisis might be dramatic, there can be a way forward. So if the same level of energy, attention, and priority is also given to climate change, I think we won't need to go to another 26 summit, because this is the 26 Conference of Parties. We wouldn't need this numerous summit to act on a crisis whose solution are already known.
Indeed. So let's focus on what African countries can do. We need capital in order to essentially fund the domestic agenda on energy transitions, on forest conservation, on dealing with land degradation. What sources of domestic capital can African economies tap into in order to deal with those needs?
Well, I think contrary to some of the dominant narrative, Africa is not poor as such as some people may tend to portray it. I think it's again an issue of looking at what we have already. What are our resources? What can we get from the agriculture sector? What can we get from the forestry? What can we get also from the minerals? And most importantly, making sure that the local citizen, local companies, businesses, and communities are prioritized, because what has been happening in the last, I think, 15 years is that we have kind of handed, we as Africans, the management of such businesses to foreign companies who have been exploiting and take away that capital. So I think this is the time to make some structural and fundamental reforms to the way our economies are structured, and ensure that whatever benefit we have on the ground benefit first to the people and the population in Africa, and not those foreign countries who have exploited and overexploited the resources of the continent.
One last question for you. So coal, of course, is a pariah asset at the moment in international finance. But as we move through this transition period, the fact of the matter is that we do have a population that does need access to affordable energy. And gas is one way of providing that affordable energy. In your view, should gas essentially be treated in the same way that coal is at the moment, or should we approach it with a more nuanced, phased approach? So we say, let's give ourselves 10 years, expand energy access, then after that, we can essentially now start to gate access to gas.
Right. I think, first of all, we have to make, I think, a distinction between some of the countries that have been historically responsible for emissions and Africa. At the same time, that nuanced approach has to take into consideration also that climate impact, human costs, and economic risk of new gas and oil projects mean that basically no fossil fuel should be exploited on the continent, in Africa and elsewhere. At the same time, there is a need for a gradual and equitable approach in phasing out such kind of facility or in the gas industry. So at the same time, countries need to look at what is a realistic timeline to transition away from gas. This is something that shouldn't happen overnight. For countries that are depending on that resource, they have to get the time to adjust, because again, this is an industry which is on which thousands, if not million people are dependent to, and also very important for the economy. But we know it's not a type of energy source which is the one of the future. So it has to come to an end. However, it also needs a gradual time and a managed phase out to be able to achieve that just transition, which again may require a couple of years to happen.
All right, we'll leave it there for the time being. Londrin Interat, Regional Director covering Africa at 350.org.